This program is brought to you by the Kentucky Small Business Development Center in Louisville. We provide the professional expertise, tools, and information necessary to help you make sound business decisions. Thank you to the U.S. Small Business Administration for co-sponsoring our program and to our host organization, the University of Kentucky. Contact us at 502-625-0123 to get started.
Hello, everyone. I'm so excited that we have a wonderful guest today, Mr. Melvin Bynes. He is the Executive Director for the Office of Civil Rights and Small Business Development with the Kentucky Transportation Cabinet. And he's going to do a great job. I know he will. He's awesome. He's going to do a job talking about, he's doing a presentation today talking about the Disadvantaged Business Enterprise Certification Program. So Mr. Bynes, I will go ahead and let you go ahead and take over and get started with your wonderful presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Tony. Thank you guys for having me, and thank you for everyone who's here today. So let me just give you a little idea of what we're going to talk about, and then we'll get right into our presentation. We're going to talk about a certification program that's run out of the Transportation Cabinet that is called the DBE Certification Program. I'm going to give you a little background history on the program, then we'll talk about eligibility, the benefits, and then what it takes actually to apply. And so we'll cover a couple of those things. Tony will allow for you guys to have questions for me after it's done. And so I'm just going to ask you as we go through, if you have that question and that thing that you really want to make sure that we get, write it down so you don't lose it, because I know how it is sometimes. And as we're going through these presentations, you have questions and then you don't get a chance to get it asked because you lost it. So feel free to jot down those questions and we'll try to answer as many of them as we possibly can as we go along. So without further ado, I'm going to try to pull up this PowerPoint for you, and we'll go through it just a little bit at a time. And hopefully, I'll try to answer as many of your questions before you get to ask them. Okay, so here we go. All right, can you see my screen?
Yes, yes.
All right. So again, welcome to Understanding DBE Certification. I am Melvin Bynes. I'm the Executive Director in the Office for Civil Rights and Small Business Development here within the Transportation Cabinet. I'm also Kentucky's DBE Liaison Officer. And what that means is that I work directly with the Federal Highway Administration to administer this program for the state of Kentucky. My counterparts across the country do the same thing, and our job is to try to level the playing field for small businesses. So let's talk a little bit about the program. The DBE program, there was federal legislation passed in 1980 that created this program. When this program was originally created, it was basically focused on minority participation. Again, the regulations were promulgated in 1983 during the Reagan administration. And it was established based upon those things surrounding the Civil Rights Act of 1964. And the idea, as I said earlier, is about trying to level that playing field for small businesses to participate and to get into the construction field, because it's such a hard market to get into if you don't already have access. And most small businesses don't have the capital or the access that a lot of your larger corporations and companies have. So we have this DBE program, and we'll talk a little bit about how that really benefits you when we get later on in the presentation. The purpose was to correct historic discrimination in federal construction contracting. As a rule, the largest and the most predominant participation in this program, meaning in construction, road construction, was not women-owned and minority firms. And that was identified as an issue. And so because of that, this program was created. The first comprehensive update came in 1999 after 7 years of discussion and attempts by members of Congress to end the program. This program is reappropriated basically on a yearly basis. They determine if we're going to continue to fund this program, and thus far, it has continued. So 4 major regulatory updates since its inception, the last being 2013 regulations, and all of them aren't officially in effect yet. So on a regular basis, they review our regulations, they add additional things, they clarify additional things, and they give us guidance on how to administer a lot of the regulations that are there. Sometimes there are subtle changes and things like that that get made, and we have to adjust from year to year. So I work for the Kentucky Transportation Cabinet. The question is, what are our responsibilities? Because we receive federal funds from USDOT. So one of the reasons that this program exists is because of that very fact. As recipients of USDOT funds, we're required to do several things. We had to establish a certification mechanism, a program that would allow us to certify firms to participate in this program. We had to set policy with a clear policy statement, clearly articulating what would happen and how the program would be governed and how contractors who utilize DBEs had to act. We had to appoint a liaison officer, and I fill that role. So the liaison officer by regulation is the go-between between the Kentucky Transportation Cabinet and the Federal Highway Administration, and he has direct access to the CEO of the Transportation Cabinet, being our cabinet secretary. So I have direct contact with him on issues and all issues related to this program. We had to have a certification program. So we had the overall program, but then we had to have a process by which you who are interested in being a DBE company can be certified. And so we do, and we've had a certification program pretty much since the outset of the regulation. And over the years, it has been modified. We've added things and we've continued to improve that process. One of the things is they wanted this program to endeavor to support DBE financial institutions. I can say that right now, our current program, we don't have any DBE owned financial institutions, but it is one of those things that we are charged with trying to make sure if they are available and if they are interested, that we make an endeavor to support that process. We have to assure prompt payment of DBEs by the primes. What do we mean by that? Well, you are fortunate enough to get certified, and then you're fortunate enough to secure a contract with one of these companies, then what we need to make sure is that you get paid timely. Because as a small business, you can't sustain the type of delay in payment that a large company can. And so within the very contract that the Transportation Cabinet has with the prime contractors, it states in there prompt payment clauses so that as a DBE, you can be certain that you're going to be paid in a timely fashion. We're required to maintain a current DBE directory. What's DBE directory? So you go through all the work and the effort to get certified. You get certified, you're now a DBE in the state of Kentucky. Well, we have a DBE directory that lists every one of the firms that are certified. It lists their contact information. It lists the type of work that they perform so that you are in a directory for those who are looking for minority-owned and women-owned businesses. And here's the thing that's really good about that. While what we're talking about primarily is road construction-related firms, we have over 400 firms in our directory. And what I will tell you is that only 25% of those firms are actually road construction related. We have firms who meet the requirements for the DBE program that do a host of other things. And so people will ask quite often, well, if they don't do road construction, what benefit is this to them? They are certified as a minority-owned business. That's one benefit. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. But the benefit also is that we have people quite frequently who are looking for women-owned and minority-owned businesses, and they will reach out to us because of the fact that we have that directory. Monitor work to assure that the DBEs are performing the work as awarded and that the work is properly counted towards DBE goals. We'll talk about this a little bit later when we talk about the DBE goals, and that is part of the benefit of being a DBE and getting certified. The role of the certification committee. So you've heard me talk about certification. Well, what is the certification and how does that work? We have a DBE certification committee for all of those applications that come in. We don't just make that decision arbitrarily whether or not you meet the requirements. We have a committee that reviews every one of the applicants that comes in and makes a determination as to whether or not they're eligible to participate in the program. They review the certification packet in detail. They ask questions, and our job as the Office for Civil Rights and Small Business Development is to prepare a report and answer all of the questions that they have about what you've provided us in your application packet. We have monthly meetings where where the committee meets. We meet twice a month, depending upon the amount of cases that are up for review. And during that time period, they will make the determination as to whether or not a firm is eligible to participate in the program. Work counted towards the goal. Again, one of the benefits of the program is that there are goals that are set. But this is very important for someone who's interested in the program and understanding the program, that only the value of work actually performed by the DBE, by you and your direct employees will count towards meeting the DBE goal. The entire amount of that portion of construction contract performed by the DBE's own forces. The value of the subcontract, if the subcontractor is a DBE. Only if the DBE is performing a commercially useful function on that contract. And we'll talk about commercially useful function for a moment here. One of the things that's very important is that as a firm who's looking to do work with the transportation cabinet, that we put you in a position to be successful. One of the things that's also important is that you are truly serving a commercially useful function on that contract. In other words, that the prime contractor isn't using you just as a pass-through for dollars so that they can meet the DBE goal on paper, but not in reality have a DBE benefiting from being on this contract. So we're going to make sure that what you're doing is not just as a pass-through, is not a function that really does not serve a purpose to the contract, and that you as a DBE are actually benefiting from this and not just being used in the course of that process. Materials or supplies obtained from a DBE manufacturer count 100% of the cost of materials or supplies toward DBE goals. Now, when we say that, when someone actually provides a service on the project, what they do physically on that project counts for 100%. But materials or supplies that are purchased from a DBE regular dealer count for 60% of the cost of materials or supplies towards DBE goals. So if I'm a prime contractor and all I'm doing is buying supplies from you, I don't get to meet that goal from the standpoint of saying that I had a DBE participate on this project, because we want to make sure now that supplier is going to get the 100% of what they charge for that. So as a DBE supplier, you're going to do just fine. But for the prime, we're trying to create more opportunity for small businesses to participate. And if all they're doing is buying supplies, it's only going to count for 60% of the value towards that, which gives them an opportunity to use another DBE who might actually be providing a physical service on the project as opposed to just supplies or something of that nature. And so packagers, brokers, manufacturers, representatives, or other persons who arrange or expedite transactions are not considered regular dealers or suppliers. They're considered a broker, and they do serve a purpose. But again, the prime is not going to get a tremendous amount of benefit dollar-wise from that participation, because what we want to make sure is that, again, they're just not using somebody. They're not just calling you to call somebody to order some supplies for the project and then getting full credit for not really engaging a DBE actively on the project. So eligibility, what are we looking at when we talk about someone being eligible for this program? So 49 CFR Part 26 determines what the eligibility criteria are for a DBE firm. And what it says, one of the things that's very important is that the firm seeking certification has the burden of demonstrating to the recipient by preponderance of evidence that meets the requirements of this subpart concerning group membership or individual disadvantage, business size, ownership, and control. That's a whole lot of words. And what are they saying? They're saying that it is your responsibility as the applicant to, beyond the shadow of a doubt, demonstrate by the preponderance of evidence that you are eligible to participate in this program. Okay, so what's the underlying statement in that? What it's saying is that we're going to request certain things from you in the application process, documents, and verification of things, and it is your responsibility to provide that information to us if you wish to participate in this program. Membership. Membership is a term that gets used in the regulation in terms of eligibility. And so the regulations require that you must rebuttably presume that citizens of the United States who are, or lawfully admitted permanent residents who are women, Black Americans, Hispanic Americans, Native Americans, Asian Pacific Americans, subcontinent Asian Americans, or other minorities found to be disadvantaged by the SBA are socially and economically disadvantaged individuals. You must require applicants to submit a signed notarized certification that each presumptively disadvantaged owner is, in fact, socially and economically disadvantaged. Part of the requirements for this program, and I'm going to cover what I like to call the technical eligibility requirements. You must be socially and economically disadvantaged, and your personal net worth can't exceed $1.32 million. And so we use what the SBA has outlined in their determination of size standard, what those groups are that have been presumed socially disadvantaged here in the United States. And so if you fall into one of those categories that I just listed, you potentially meet the socially disadvantaged portion of that requirement. The next thing is going to be, meeting the economic disadvantage portion, which is that your personal net worth does not exceed $1.32 million. And so let's talk about that economic disadvantage. Personal net worth below $1.32 million does not include the value of the applicant business or the value of the applicant's equity in his or her primary residence. So we're not going to count the value of the business. That's going to be excluded in terms of your 1.32 million. And we're not going to count the equity in your primary residence. But that house you got in the Hamptons, that yacht, any other assets are going to count towards that 1.32 million. And so typically, if you've provided us all the information and we look at it and we do an assets check and everything checks out, we're going to move forward based upon what's there. But if there are questions, and if you are bumping right up against that 1.32 million, or there's a question, we may request a certified P&W, which is a personal net worth statement that's done by your accountant, your audit, for audit purposes to verify that you do not exceed that 1.32 million. And let me just go ahead and say this about that 1.32 million. In the event that, say, you are doing so well that you do exceed that 1.32 million, and then we have a year like 2020, where businesses are being impacted and hit in ways that were unexpected and quite unbelievable, and your personal net worth drops below that 1.32 million. If you were not eligible before, you are eligible to reapply based upon the fact that you are no longer at that level. And so just keep that in mind as we move forward and we talk about the certification process, and we just talk about the program in general, that just because you were not eligible today based upon a specific thing does not mean that if your circumstances legitimately change, that you can't be found to be eligible at a later point in time. Applicants are required to cooperate. And what does that mean? That means that if you have made application and we're going through that process to certify you, and we're requesting for documentation so that we can determine your eligibility to be able for us to move forward, you're going to have to cooperate and provide us with that information. Or either one of a couple things can happen. Quite frankly, your application can be denied, or the application process can be terminated because we don't have enough information to make a determination. Okay. Non-members may attempt to prove social and economic disadvantage. So in that previous slide where we talked about those presumed eligible categories, there is an allowance in the regulations in Appendix E that allows that if someone does not meet the social disadvantage categories that are there, they can apply under Appendix E, and based upon meeting all the criteria in that appendix, they can apply to prove that they are socially disadvantaged. To be an eligible firm, a firm must be at least 51% owned by socially and economically disadvantaged individuals. So let me explain that for you. So we're always going to be looking at the majority ownership of the company. So that 51% can be by one individual. You can be the 51% owner, or it can be made up by multiple individuals. But they will all have to meet the socially and economic disadvantaged portions of the regulations. So collectively, if one of you has 20%, another one has 20%, and then another one has 11%, and maybe we have three ladies who own this company, so by being female, they meet the technical socially disadvantaged portion. And so collectively, the three of them make up that 51%. So now we've got the 51% there. And so then what we're going to request is a personal net worth statement from each of those individuals to make sure that individually, each one of them are under the 1.32 million. And so that they meet the eligibility portion, the economic portion of the socially and economically disadvantaged. Or again, if it's one individual who has that 51% or two, whatever it may be, we're going to look at, they must have 51% ownership and they have to be economically disadvantaged. So the ownership must be real, substantial, and continuing. It can't just be on paper. We're going to look at control. We're going to look at your ownership interest in terms of what you've invested to gain that ownership interest. We're going to make sure that you are truly the owners of this company and not just on paper. Because if you're truly a small business and you're trying to compete in this market, we want you to be competing with other small businesses. We don't want you to be competing with big corporation A, who has put somebody on paper as the owner of the company so that you're competing against this big company who can buy it cheaper than you, who can do it cheaper than you, and can do all of those things. We want to make sure that we keep the playing field level. And part of that is making sure, that the ownership is real, substantial, and continuing. And it also says go beyond pro forma ownership of the firm as reflected in ownership documents. Again, and that's a part of that. We don't want it to just be on paper. We want to be able to make that determination that that person really is the owner. That the owner share in the risk and profits reflective of their ownership interest. Their expertise must be applicable to the firm and can't be solely administrative. So let me discuss those last two bullets. Expertise must be applicable to the firm. We have folks who have tremendous knowledge and tremendous skill sets, but don't necessarily possess that expertise related to what they want to get their company certified for. So if someone has been in the medical field for years, they have their doctorate, they have all of those accolades, and then tomorrow they decide that they're going to start a construction company and build bridges for the state of Kentucky. Our question is going to be, we're going to request a resume that shows that you have the knowledge, skills, and ability to build a bridge in the state of Kentucky. We're not discounting someone's knowledge and education in another field, but for what it is that we're looking at certifying you for, we're going to look to see that you have that expertise. And so we're going to ask for that resume, and we're going to ask for that background and that history that shows that you can do this specific thing. The other part of it is that your ownership and your involvement, even as it relates to that experience, can't be solely administrative. We've had a scenario and plenty of times where someone has been a part of this company and been in the construction company for the last 10 years, but they were just an admin within that company. They did not have the background experience in operating, directing the daily operations of the company. And so again, we have to make sure that if you're out on I-64 and we've got a road that's going in and there's a problem, that we can call you and say, hey, here's the issue. How is this going to be rectified? And that you can answer that. And so a lot of people have challenged the fact that people own companies all the time who don't have personal experience. That's very true. But for this program, and based upon the way the regulations are written, the firm must be owned at least by 51% owned by a socially and economically disadvantaged individual who is also in control. And we consider control your ability to direct the goings on of the daily activities of that business, not just in word, but actually knowledge of what's going on. And that's just one of the requirements for this program. And so it's important that we establish that for folks at the outset so they understand if they run into difficulties in getting certified, what some of those issues are. We are trying to grow minority-owned, women-owned businesses that you really are the ones who own and operate. Only an independent business may be certified as a DBE, and that goes to my previous comment. So we have a situation where maybe you do have this expertise. You are the person, you've been doing concrete work for other companies for years, and now you have started your own concrete company. There are certain things that we're going to ask you and certain expectations we're going to have. Only an independent business may be certified as a DBE. An independent business is one, the viability of which does not depend on its relationship with another firm or firms. And so I want to make a quick distinction here for you in that. A lot of people, when they start out, they don't have all of the equipment. They don't necessarily have everything that they're going to need for the course of their life as a company, but they have the necessities. And what they do is they go out and they lease or rent from a rental company those other pieces of equipment. As long as they have that long-term lease and we can document that, man, they're good to go. But some will say, hey, the guy that I used to work for who owns big conglomerate A says that I can use his equipment anytime that I want. I've got access to everything that I used to use when I worked for him, and I am good to go. It's not going to work for this program because you don't own that equipment. You don't have the independence as a certified DBE to run this business the way that it needs to be run for this program. Because if he has an accident on a whole nother project that is not related to you, he being the owner of big conglomerate A, and they shut him down and lock the gates on all of his equipment, you now have a problem because you don't have equipment that you own and that you have access to. More importantly, if you bid on a contract and you get that job and they're ready for you to start tomorrow or a couple months from now, whatever that time frame is, but because he's picked up a lot of extra work and he doesn't have that equipment free, now it creates a problem for you and for the cabinet because we have things that are time limited and require for you to be able to start when you agreed to start. And so being independent is very important for the business, for us to make sure, again, that you are truly an independent company in control, that this is you growing your business and that this is not something that's being controlled by somebody else. So we're going to scrutinize the relationships with non-DBE firms in such areas as personnel, facilities, equipment, financial, bonding support, and other resources. Just like we're talking about equipment, your employees need to be your employees. They need to be people that are on your payroll and not on his payroll. We're going to look at the relationships between disadvantaged owners of these DBE and non-DBE firms or persons associated with non-DBE firms that would compromise the independence of the potential DBE. You know, people feel sometimes that these things are restrictive, but the experience has taught us that we protect you by making sure that you are independent and that you are the person who's in control of what you do, because you don't ever feel that pressure to do something inappropriate because of that relationship that you have with that company that makes you beholden to them, and that they're going to be fine, but they may put you in a compromising position. So that's one of the things and why we try to make sure that there's that independence that exists between you and any of the other companies that you might have had a relationship with. The DBE firm must not be subject to any formal and informal restrictions would limit the customary discretion of the socially and economically disadvantaged owners. You have to be allowed to make the decisions for yourself and for your company, totally. You can't be under any kind of restrictions that don't allow you, the owner, to be in control, make the final say and final decision on what happens with your business. DBE eligible owner must have the power to direct the management and policies of the firm. And I think we've kind of established that with what we just said, you know, but a couple of the things that we do look at is, does that owner hold the highest officer position in the company? Chief executive officer or president, et cetera. That's important when we're looking at who really is in control. In a corporation, the owner must control the board of directors. And in a partnership, you must serve as general partners with control over all the partnership decisions. Again, we're trying to make sure that you are in control of your company, that you have the ability to make the final decisions, and that the person who this certification is based upon is the person that we can rely upon to be in control. Other considerations. We're going to look at whether a firm has exhibited a pattern of conduct indicating its involvement in attempts to evade or subvert the intent or requirements of the DBE program. So when we're looking at certification, you know, we're going to try to make sure, have you been truthful? Have you been honest with us? Are we looking at information that says, you know, this calls into question the veracity of the things that they've said, because this looks like it's circumventing the program. And there are clear things in the regulations that require us to look at any red flags like that that we find. Failure or refusal to provide such information is grounds for denial or removal of certification. So even if somebody gets certified, we have requirements on a yearly basis of just annual update information so that we can determine that you continue to be eligible. And then once every 3 years, we're going to do another face-to-face with you to determine if your eligibility also will continue. So an eligible DBE firm must be owned by individuals who are socially and economically disadvantaged, and we've already discussed that. Program benefits. So what are the objectives of the DBE program, and how does this program benefit you? Program objectives. Again, as we said, we want to level the playing field for minority businesses and women-owned businesses that don't have the customary opportunity to get into the workforce the way that larger companies do. So to ensure non-discrimination in the award and administration of USDOT assisted contracts, Transportation Cabinet contract procurement, to create a level playing field, to ensure the law is narrowly tailored to correct past discrimination in accordance with the law and General Assembly Congress, to ensure that only DBE eligible firms are permitted to participate. And that's important. This program was created so that we could carve out an opportunity for small businesses. And if the firm is not truly a legitimate DBE or eligible per the regulations, then they don't need to be participating and taking the work away from those of you that meet those requirements. We want to help remove barriers to participation and to assist the development of DBE firms. So, one of the major benefits of this program is the fact that they are DBE goals. What's a DBE goal? So, because of the fact that we receive federal funds from the Federal Highway Administration, we're required to have this program. One of the benefits for those who become DBEs is that on all federal assisted federal aid projects where there are federal dollars, we review every one of those projects for the possibility of DBE participation, meaning we're going to look at the type of work that's there. We're going to try to determine if there's an opportunity for a DBE to make money and to work on this particular project. So we're going to look at all the DBEs that we have certified and say, okay, there's this work, there's this line item of work, there's this line item of work, and there's this line item of work. We have folks who are certified who can perform that. So we're going to include this dollar amount in the goal. And so there are DBE goals, not quotas or set-asides, set on projects. Now there's a 10% national aspirational goal, but that's not the way that we set the goals on projects. So currently, the Cabinet's overall goal for the year is 11.1%. What that means is of all those federal dollars that we receive, the goal is to try to see that 11.1% of that goes to women-owned and minority-owned small businesses here in the Commonwealth. We have a formula and a format where that goal is determined every 3 years, and we operate under that goal for a 3-year period of time. Now that's the Cabinet's overall goal. As far as projects go, like I said, as we look at those individual projects to see that there are opportunities for you to participate, those are project goals, and they're set by a goal-setting committee. Now I sit on that goal-setting committee. And so again, we look at each one of these projects, line item by line item, whatever the work item is in that project, and try to determine, the opportunity for women-owned and minority-owned businesses to participate, and we set a goal. And that's important because we're looking at an overall goal of 11.1%. Sometimes we have projects where there's not that that much work, or we don't have DBEs who are certified to do that kind of work. So that limits the opportunity for participation. But then we might have another job that comes along where there's tons of opportunity for participation that exceeds 11.1%. So with the project goals, we're going to set those based upon what's available in that project, but we're not going to limit ourselves to only 11.1% if there's an opportunity for greater than that. Because what that does is it helps us when we have those projects where there is not as much opportunity for us still to be able to be inclusive for DBEs over the course of the year and still to try to hit that target goal of 11.1%. And so we set the goals. The goal setting committee sets the goals or makes those recommendations. They go to the secretary's office and they sign off on those. And ultimately, they're approved by the Federal Highway Administration. The idea is that the goal should reflect the number of certifiable firms that are ready, willing, and able to do work that is reflected in that particular project. So if we've got folks that can do the work and we've got work in that project that those folks can participate in, the goal is to set a goal that will be inclusive and give those individuals an opportunity to bid. Why is this a benefit? Well, there's a lot of different programs that are out there, and you can be certified as a minority business, but all of them don't have a process where they regularly set a goal for participation. The other huge benefit with our program is there's no cost. A lot of the other programs require you to pay to be certified, and there's some continuing requirements to pay. In the time that I've been a part of this program and the time this program has existed, the state of Kentucky has not charged for the DBE certification. And to my knowledge, it's not in our intention to do so anytime soon. So how do you apply? Well, there's an application process for folks that are in state, and then there's an application process for folks who are out of state. And we'll talk about both of those. So we'll receive your application. And now what used to be a paper application, we have an electronic online application process. And so you'll go to our website, you'll click on the link for DBE online application. It'll take you out where you're going to create an account. And once that account is created, it will take you right into the application and the application process. And then you'll go through that application. There's several things that are required in terms of information and documentation before you can complete that application. And then once that is done, we will receive that completed application. It then is assigned to an investigator. One of our investigators will go out, they'll look at the application, they'll look at all the documentation that's been uploaded, they'll determine if everything is there, if they have any questions about what was provided, if there's anything that needs to be clarified. And then within that 14 days, the investigator will make contact with the applicant regarding any additional information needed and requests for additional documentation. Now, under normal circumstances, being a non-pandemic year, we would conduct an on-site face-to-face with the owner and do a on-site questionnaire. What we've done is now we're doing that virtually. And so we'll reserve the right to come out and look at the place of business, equipment, and several other things that we usually use as part of the verification and documentation process for the file. But for the time being, what we're doing is we're doing that virtually. And so we're not subjecting anybody to have to do face-to-face because we know that the comfort level is not there, and we want to be safe and we want to keep everybody who's applying safe. After that, the investigator will come back. They will take all the information that came in the application. They will take the information that was gleaned from the on-site visit, or in this case, the virtual on-site visit. They'll combine that into a report that will go to the certification committee. and they will make a recommendation to the certification, if I could say that word, they will make a recommendation to the certification committee in terms of certification of that firm. Consideration and vote by the certification committee will make that final determination. And so as a rule, we have 90 days to process a in-state application. Staff have, in the time I've been here, 14 years, very rarely have we had something go to 90 days. If it does, it's usually because the applicant has not provided all the information, or we're working with them to get everything that we need. Staff are pretty quick at turning things around, even right now during the pandemic. Quite frankly, I think they're being more efficient because they have a whole lot less distractions right now. And so we have 90 days to process that. Our typical time frame has been between 60 and sometimes as quick as 30 days. But the turnaround is usually pretty quick if you provide everything that we need for that application. Out of state or interstate certification refers to companies who are seeking certification who are not Kentucky firms, and there is a process for that. You get certified with your home state first, and so if you're in Indiana or Ohio or West Virginia or California for that matter, you get certified in your home state, and then you can seek certification with the Kentucky Transportation Cabinet. And after you've gone through the certification with your home state, the process with us is pretty much the same, except for right now with Indiana. If you are a firm or an applicant who its company is an Indiana firm, and you are certified in the state of Indiana first, which is typically the requirement, Kentucky and Indiana have entered into a reciprocity agreement that says that if you are certified in Indiana, you don't have to go through the certification process to bid on work in Kentucky. All you have to do is meet Kentucky's pre-qualification requirements as a road construction contractor, and vice versa. So firms who are certified in in Kentucky currently don't have to seek certification in Indiana to work if they want to. But the difference between the time frames is that those firms who are certified in their home state outside of Kentucky, we only have 60 days to process those applications. And so basically everything else is the same, except for the fact that on-site visit that we do virtually and that we normally do face-to-face, the home state will complete that, and we will request a copy of that from the home state. So we won't even do the virtual on-site with the firm unless there is something that requires it. So just a little information on our staff and the investigators and what they do. Their role with the application process is to cite deficiencies, request additional information, of course, to interview the owner, to conduct that on-site or virtual on-site, and to assist the applicants in completion of the process. That's important. We want to make sure that you guys know. Use us as a resource. What I always try to tell people who are applying for this program is that when you're in the process of completing that application, if you have any questions, reach out to us and ask us. I won't tell you what to say, but I will tell you what the application is asking for on that particular line, what documentation it wants from you, and that kind of thing. Because once we get the application, we're going to go by what you've put on that application. And so if you have something that's not really clear to you and you have questions about, feel free to reach out to us and ask us a question so that we can be a resource for you, because we would much rather help you get it right. And so that when we review the application, what we're reviewing is correct, because it's what we're going to use to make that determination, versus you struggling through it on your own and maybe getting something wrong or incorrect that causes you to not get a favorable certification decision. And so again, use us as a resource. Staff are here, and that's the role, and that's what we do. So you've gotten your application in, you've applied, you've gone through everything, and it's going to the certification committee for approval. We meet on the first and third Wednesday of each month at 10 a.m. unless, of course, there are not enough cases for us to meet. And then we may only meet once that month. And any applications that come in after that would be to defer to the following month. Other than that, there is only 1 month out of the year where we typically don't have a meeting, and that is the month of December. And that's largely because of all of the holidays and the time off between November and December, that we either don't usually get that many applications, or we don't have the staff or the committee available to review them. So we typically do not have a meeting in the month of December. Again, I think we've kind of gone through the process, but what I will say this, talk a little bit about what the certification committee does and what their process is. They receive all of the cases that are on the docket 7 to 10 days in advance so that they can review those cases. They review, and quite often prior to the meeting, if they see something that they have a question about, they're not sure about, they will reach out to us and ask us for clarification. They may ask to actually see the file or any documentation therein so that they can really understand what it is that they're looking at. And we prefer that for them to ask us ahead of the meeting so that when we come to the meeting, they've already had an opportunity to ask their questions. We've had an opportunity to advocate for you by providing them with what information it is that they need. And then that meeting can be about, the different committee members discussing amongst themselves what their individual findings were when they reviewed the case, and to make that determination of yay or nay for that DBE application. Let's just say that for some reason you don't get certified, or you have been certified before, and now because of some finding that we have, your certification is removed. You have 90 days to appeal directly to the Federal Highway Administration. If there is no appeal, or an appeal is lost, though that firm is removed from the program, and they can reapply in 6 months from the date of the denial. So you have recourse. If you don't get certified, or if you get removed, you can go directly to USDOT for your appeal. They will review that. They will request a copy of the file and the action and everything from us. And it is a legitimate appeals process. A lot of times people say, well, I don't want to go through that because it's not going to help, it's not going to work, or et cetera. The reality of it is this: if for some reason we have made an incorrect decision, the appeals process is there for you. We support you in doing that, and so does the Federal Highway Administration. Because of the fact that we try to be accurate and we try to be thorough, we don't have a lot of appeals that are overturned, or a lot of decisions that are overturned, but there have been a few in the 14 years that I've been here. And some of it has been procedural, where we missed something, or different things. As a matter of fact, we ourselves have reversed some decisions based upon the fact that there were some extenuating circumstances that the applicant did not respond to us timely. They didn't meet the time frame, and we moved forward. We were able to determine that there were some things that were beyond their control and things that we didn't know at the time, and we were able to adjust for that. But the reality of it is, in the application process at the very front end, for the most part, you need to comply. You need to provide us with the information that we're requesting. And if all of those things go well, the process usually works out well for you. But there is an appeals process in the event that you are not satisfied with the decision that was rendered. Questions?
I actually have a couple of questions for you. Is that okay?
Sure.
Okay.
Yes.
So my first question is, I was looking on you all's website where the online application,
Hmm.
and I noticed that there's a DBA airport concession. So that led me to think that this is just not for construction. Am I correct?
That is correct. And so the uh, DBE, ACDBE, airport concessionaire, is for, if, say, for example, Tony, that you ran one of the bookstores in the airport, or you ran a restaurant in the airport, you could be certified as a DBE concessionaire. And so there are certain requirements for meeting the requirements of being a concessionaire. And that regulation is 49 CFR Part 23. Most of it mirrors 49 CFR Part 26, but there are a couple differences in some of the requirements. That it includes car rental companies, and it also includes management firms that do things for the airport, meaning in most cases, those concessionaires have to be on site. But there are a couple of logistics type things that can also meet the concessionaire requirement. So yes, there are other opportunities that are not just construction related. And to that fact, let me just expand on that question. We have firms in our directory that go from building bridges to making quilts. We have quilt makers, we have candy shops, we have the gamut of firms that are certified. Now, all of those obviously wouldn't meet a DBE goal on a road construction project, but they do meet the criteria for being considered a certified DBE. And some would ask, well, why would they do that? Well, we've had companies who the casinos wanted to use for, because they made the bags that you put money in. They were certified as a DBE, and they met a requirement for them. We've had companies that Toyota or somebody else might be looking at using because of a specific thing that they do. So don't let anybody exclude yourself from being potentially eligible for the certification because what you do is not road construction related. There still may be an opportunity for you to be certified as a DBE.
Okay. I have one more question coming in from Robin.
Sure.
She says, hello. She says
Hi.
hello to you. She says, you mentioned a company will have a virtual office tour. If you do not have a physical office space, can you still be certified?
Yes.
All, okay, so yes,
Yes.
okay. And then the second part of it is she says, we are an IT consulting software as a service firm specializing in project management. Do you
Okay.
certify companies with our expertise?
Absolutely, we would. And so, for anybody else who's out there who's listening, if you're a home-based business, you can still be certified as a DBE. You know, we have a lot of companies that basically their office is in their home, and so we've done a lot of physical on-site visits to someone's home office, and that's perfectly fine. As far as being an IT company, we've probably got several IT companies certified within the program. And again, while immediately you might not see an opportunity within transportation, but the fact that you are certified as a disadvantaged business enterprise, as a minority business owner, it makes a difference. I tell people this: the certification can never hurt you, because if you're in you have an opportunity to bid on a contract, and I look at you and I look at another company, and all things are equal. Your quotes are pretty close, your experience is pretty close, but then I start looking and I see that you've been certified as a disadvantaged business enterprise through the Kentucky Transportation Cabinet, and on and on and on, these other things that you have. It may be just the thing that differentiates you from somebody else, that you've gone through a rigorous certification program and that you met the requirements to be certified in a federal program. And so, but to your point, yes, we do have firms that are IT technology related. One of the things that we do, the other benefit again of being in the program and being in our directory, is that from time to time we do get people who are seeking firms to participate. And so a lot of times they will send us an invitation for people to bid, or they will just ask for a link to our directory. If you're in our directory and we get an invitation to bid for anything, we're going to send that out to everybody in our directory. And you'll have an opportunity to kind of to bid on that. And I've had people say, well, this is a building that the University of Kentucky is building, and they're talking about concrete and beams and all of that stuff, and I do security. Why are you sending this to me? Well, my thinking has always been, that a building is going up. They may not be to the security portion yet. So that gives you an advantage that somebody else doesn't have, in the fact that you can reach out to that capital projects person and say, hey, I know you guys are just breaking ground, but I want to give you my information so that when you get to the security portion of this, you already know that I'm here and we can already be discussing. So it's just another one of those benefits. And the same thing would apply for you with IT if there's application process for them in what they're doing down the road.
So the next, thank you for that. And she
Sure.
says, thank you as well. So we have a question from Robert Martin. He says, I sent a DBE application to Washington about 6 weeks ago.
Okay.
They called him to inform him that he needs to send the packet to the Kentucky Department of Transportation. He's asking if you will honor that application packet.
Okay, Robert, where is your company located? Are you a Kentucky firm?
Let's see, he's got to respond here.
Okay.
So while he's taking the time to respond, I did want to ask you a question about the on-site or virtual visit.
Yes.
What
Yes.
can people expect? Like, is it an hour long? Is it an all-day situation?
It's not an all-day situation, but in most cases, it'll be every bit of an hour, maybe just a little bit more. It kind of depends on, some of it is going to depend on the type of business that they have and some of the questions that we have to ask. But there's a questionnaire that we go through, and the investigators are, pretty thorough in terms of, or should I say, pretty good in terms of expediting that process. But you're going to look at least an hour. And I say that because some are faster than others, and some take a little bit longer because some of the firms are a little bit more deliberate in their answers, and so they can be like me and verbose and wordy. So it just kind of depends on who it is.
So is there an online checklist that goes along with the application? Because I find that, like, sometimes if people know what to expect in the application, then they can get prepared for the online better. Is there anything like that?
So we don't have, at this point, I don't think there's anything on our website that's a separate checklist that tells you, but the application itself kind of walks you through. And for the most part, I don't think there's anything that, if you are in business, that is going to be a too much of a shocker for you that, what is this? I don't know. I mean, there may be some terminology, and that's the other reason why I say, please use us as a resource. Give us a call if you're in the course of that. But the application kind of leads you through in terms of, these are things you have to have. Okay. And that.
So Robert says he's from Louisville, Kentucky. That's where his business.
Okay. So Robert, my guess would be, and let me just, again, I'm making an assumption here because, I'm not able to actually talk to you. My assumption is that you applied for the DBE program in Washington, and what DC said was you need to be certified in your home state first. And so what they're going to want is for you to seek certification with us. And once you're certified with us, then they will look at your application for certification with them. And so that's based upon the little bit of information that I have from you. I think that's what you're looking at right now. And so you're going to need to be certified with us first.
Yeah, he said, yes, that you're correct. He was trying to apply for the one in DC. So You're correct. One last question that I have is, can you be a startup and apply for this, or should you be in business for a while?
You know, that's one of the things that I think is pretty beneficial about this program. Brand new businesses are not penalized. And so you can be a brand spanking new business and apply in this program. Now, there are still certain things that we're going to do. We're going to need to know that you are operational and that you are able and ready to perform. But there's not a you have to be in business for a year or you have to have been in business 3 years or 5 years or anything like that. We're going to try to determine you're the 51% owner, you are economically disadvantaged, you are in control, you're independent, and that you have everything that you need to actually operate the business that you're seeking to get certified.
Okay. Um, the it was something you said about the startup. I'm sorry. So, like, do you all require any type of financial documents, like maybe tax returns or anything like that?
Yes, yes. All of that will be part of that application. We're going to, and so that's a very good question, Tony. So obviously, for a firm, this company that's been around for a while, we're going to be asking for your previous 3 years taxes so that we can determine if you meet the size standard. Because the one thing that I didn't mention, which I needed to, is that so I talked about your personal net worth can exceed $1.32 million. Your annual gross receipts for this program can't exceed 23.98. And so we're going to look at your last 3 years tax returns. So well, Melvin, what happens if I'm a brand new company? I just started this company. I haven't even filed taxes yet. Then we're going to look at what you do have. We're going to treat it, obviously, you don't have a tax return. So we're not going to be able to do that information. Or let's just say you've only been in business you've only filed taxes once. We're going to take what you filed that 1 year, we're going to annualize it and then use a formula that the regulations gives us for that. But we're not going to penalize you because you don't have the 3 years taxes. We're going to use what the regulation requires us to do to determine eligibility for you to participate.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So there's no other questions, and you've answered all of mine. So thank you for being a trooper. I appreciate that.
No problem.
Okay, well, it looks like we have gotten to actually over our time. So I do appreciate all of your time today, and thank you for that. And I just wanted to let all of our participants know, someone has a last minute question. So can I
pose it? Yes, you can.
Okay.
Yes, you can.
So Robert says, sorry, but I don't want to be certified in Washington. He's asking, will you accept the same application packet that he for certification in Kentucky?
Sure. He can send that to us, but what we're probably going to ask him to do, because we've gone to an electronic process now, what I realized that I didn't do on this last slide, because I thought I had my contact information here, and I do not, and I don't have it on that first slide either. So what I'm going to offer is that I will get Tony all of my contact information and the link to our online application. And if you'll just go in and enter that information, because a lot of it is going to want you to upload some of those documents anyway, Robert. And so if you'll go in and put in your general information, upload those documents into our electronic system, we'll get that application assigned to one of my staff, and we'll go through that process for you. Absolutely. And if you have any questions along the way, just let me know. I'm going to be sending Tony the copy of this presentation. And when I send her that, I'll send her my contact information, our office's contact information, and the link to our online application. And that way everyone will have access to it.
Okay. So one last question to you. Mr. Patel says, what if, can he and his wife both apply at the same time for the DBE? I'm assuming there's two different firms there, but I don't. Sure. Okay.
Yes, they can.
Okay. And then Robin wants to tell you this has been extremely helpful and to thank you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. And Tony, I'm going to leave this up to you and to the participants, I can answer questions as long as you guys have time, but I don't want to abuse anybody's time because I know everybody's time is valuable.
Well,
But I'm here to answer questions.
Okay, so let me see if we have any more. Oh, and Mr. Patel says, thank you. Thank you so much.
Everyone, you're welcome. I thank you all for taking the time and investing in yourself and in your future as entrepreneurs, because you have to invest in yourself to get the most out of what you're trying to do as a business owner. And so thank you for taking the time to try to find out about this program and how it might work for you.
Well, it looks like that's all of our questions. Okay. I just wanted to let all of the participants know that later on today, by the close of business, you should get a copy of the presentation, as well as a link that will lead you to the recording of today's session. Once again, Mr. Bynes, you've been awesome. Thank you for your thorough presentation. You were excellent. We appreciate your time.
Thank you all.
Okay. You all have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.
All right. Goodbye.